It's good to see everyone this evening. I think it is about time to get started. Continuing lesson 50, we were on question 5, I think, when class ended on Sunday. Carlin, would you mind leading us in prayer before we start?
Right. Our Heavenly Father, thank you so much for this day that you blessed us with and nicer weather outside. We're reminded of your creation and all the blessings that you give to us. We're thankful for your Son and his death on the cross for our sins. Help us to be living for him each and every day. We're thankful for this opportunity to open up your word and study from it. Help us to seek where we can apply it to our lives and become closer to you, and seek where we can share that word with others as well. We pray all these things in Jesus' name.
Amen. Thank you. So we were on question 5, and I'll kind of recap some of the answers Grace gave us on Sunday, and she can correct me if I say anything that is incorrect or out of line or inconsistent with what she set forth. How does lightning flash reveal something about the day of the Son of Man, and what are the references to the days of Noah and Lot suggest? A couple of principles about this, and I recap a lot of what Grace said and may add a couple of things in there. We think, first of all, just kind of separately thinking about lightning and some of its characteristics. First of all, I guess we should lay out what is Jesus talking to here, beginning in Luke 17:22, when he says, "The days will come when you shall desire to see one of the days of the Son of Man, and you shall not see it," and he begins developing that, and anytime this sort of line of thought comes up, there are generally a couple of things he's probably referring to, or both, and that would be the coming destruction of Jerusalem, or the second coming, the final judgment. So those are the first things that when we sort of have this these thoughts assembled sort of come to mind. And I think here there are some things, and if I am incorrect or those disagree, I'll be happy to discuss those. But I think there are a couple of things that tell us this has to be the destruction of Jerusalem that Jesus is looking toward. Mainly because if we get down, I think, verse 31, "In that day he that shall be on the housetop and his goods in the house, let him not go down to take them away, and let him that is in the field likewise not return back." That this is addressed at all suggests to me that there's a choice. That there is a choice for the person to make. I'm either going to go back down in the house and get my stuff, or I'm not. And on the final day, the second coming, that's not going to matter. That there's not going to be a choice. The Lord's going to come, and we've addressed it other times, and will address it other times. But those will be Matthew 24. This will come back up again when we get there. That there are some things that the suddenness and the finality of it, I think, suggests second coming. And here, that there is a choice to be made, an urgency granted, but a choice to be made. I think we have to kind of land on the destruction of Jerusalem of what he's foretelling here. He also, to a point Bob sort of amplified to me, Verse 25, first he must suffer many things and be rejected of this generation. Jesus telling his disciples again about what is now very, very near at hand, the things that will happen surrounding his generation. But then the discussion continues still in the context of this generation. So I think that may suggest to us that it's the destruction of Jerusalem as well, although I think those later verses in the chapter especially land on that. So given that, the matter of lightning, just characteristics of lightning, I was just kind of trying to think about, what do we think about lightning? Well, first of all, it's pretty sudden, which is one of the things Jesus is touting about this situation he's describing. It's sudden. But what else is lightning? Lightning spreads quickly. Once it appears, its spread is rapid. And that echoes what he's saying as well. There's not really going to be time to decide. You're going to have had to have made your decision and be ready for what's coming at the time it happens. And then the other thing is we know lightning can be very powerful. And what Jesus is talking about happening is going to be a very emphatic and conclusive judgment that's going to take place on the nation of Israel. So those were some thoughts that came to mind. And then as far as the tying in Noah and Lot to that really also suggests the same scenario. What does Jesus say was going on at the time of Noah and at the time of Lot? They were just going about their lives as normal. They weren't, A, they were going about their lives as normal. B, they weren't paying attention to God as they should have been. They were not, by and large, but for a few, at the time of Noah and in the days of Lot at Sodom and Gomorrah, there weren't but a few faithful. And they were not prepared for the judgment that came, and the judgment that came was severe and final in the context of those times. So likewise, the destruction of Jerusalem coming a little over, about 35, 37 years from the point in time Jesus is talking about it, bears those same characteristics. So, kind of catching us up on number 5, what other input do you have?
Lightning, thunderings, and constellation of the sun and moon being darkened are all things that are used in the Old Testament to indicate a judgment of God. In the Old Testament, it's usually talking about a specific judgment that God made against a nation. So again, going, putting the line of reason that this is the destruction of Jerusalem in that light, the Old Testament uses similar type indications about temporal judgments that God is executed.
Very good, very good. Other thoughts? Okay. Seth, do you have the next one? Why are the disciples to remember Lot's wife?
You recall in the story that she basically got distracted by what was going on behind her. And so what I wrote down is that Jesus wanted them to focus on the task at hand, what was going on. That is following him and not to turn back. And that's kind of what Paul encourages later on in the New Testament too, is just focus on the race and just focus on that, winning that.
Exactly. Lot's wife turned back, and while the statement may not be explicitly made, suggestion is that she turned back longingly. And the point that Jesus makes is, when this time comes, and Seth said it well, your decision needs to have already been made. You need to have decided that you will stay faithful to God. You will need to have decided that your physical things are not as important as saving your life and obeying me. And that was not Lot's wife's mindset. She looked back in longing for what she was leaving behind, not for the salvation that God had put before her.
And contextually, assuming that this is the destruction of Jerusalem, the other part of that is the whole book of Hebrews is talking about the same type thing. Don't turn back to the law of Moses. And the apostles had a hard time getting that through them. It took a vision from God for Peter to understand, and the miracle of Cornelius speaking in tongues to convince him that, yeah, the Gentiles can be a Christian on the same basis that a Jew can be a Christian. And that was a big deal during the first century, the early part of the first century church. That probably has something to do. You're also not turning back to the Mosaic law. And in point of fact, people today still turn back to the Mosaic law to try to get things like candles and incense and musical instruments into worship. And we're not to turn back to Mosaic law. It was nailed to the cross.
This is not coming up in another question. And much along those lines, verse 33, Jesus interjects, "Whosoever shall seek to gain his life shall lose it, but whosoever shall lose his life shall preserve it." And you'll recall he has said that same thing in different contexts. He'll say it again. He's going to say it during the final week. I'm sure he said it many more times than that. That's what we have recorded. But you know, in whatever context that statement might be applied, Jesus is stating, you commit yourself to me, you do what I have told you to do, and as Bob suggested, you go forward. It's not a step off the path, it's not a step backwards, it's not choose your own direction. You choose my way and you go forward, and whatever else is required to leave behind, you leave it behind. Very good. Others? Seth?
Just looking at the account of Lot and his wife, in verse 17 of chapter 19, so it came to pass when they had brought them outside, and then he said, "Escape for your life." And it says, "Do not look behind you, or stay anywhere in the as a direct order." It's not like a suggestion, or if you want to. It's a direct command.
So it's an actual blatant act of disobedience.
If you do, there's a consequence.
Right.
And that's, Jesus is also saying that if you do this, something's going to happen and it's not going to work out well.
Exactly. Very good. Very good. Others? All right. Number 7, when the disciples asked where all of this was to take place, what answer did they receive, and what does that mean? Danielle, do you have that one?
Wherever death is or judgment, the consequences will be readily apparent.
Yeah, we're looking at verse 37 there at the end of the chapters. Where, Lord? Where is this going to be? He said, where the body is, thither will the eagles also be gathered together. When there is death, the birds of prey gather. The American Standard says eagles is probably more appropriately translated vultures or buzzards, but you'll see the signs. There will be signs of death and destruction, and you will need to be aware of that. When the Roman army begins to gather, you will know you have been warned. That is the time. That is the time that these choices, the last few verses discuss, must be made. Will you be the one that leaves and is preserved, or will you be the one that stays and is lost? Other thoughts at the end of Luke 17. Eric, I guess we're going to jump back to you. Number 8. For what reason did Jesus give the parable of the persistent widow?
Luke 18, what's 8? Faith.
We can actually bookend, at least to me, as to the reason Jesus gave. First of all, he starts in 18 verse 1, he spake a parable unto them to the end that they ought always to pray and not to faint. They ought always to pray and not to faint. Paul told the Thessalonians, pray without ceasing. That wasn't an original thought with him, a very good one, but not an original one. Jesus said, always pray and don't faint. There again, that word to faint, Jesus has several times already stated that he does not want his people to be fearful. He does not want them to fail to serve him out of fear for what will happen. And that's really this, that they, and not to faint, that's what that word means. Don't become fearful. Don't become discouraged. Pray. And there is instruction. There is a way to overcome becoming discouraged, weary, faithful. Pray always. Any thoughts on that one? Bob?
Again, verse 1 there, then, goes back to 17:22. This is again talking to the disciples, who were 12 of which were going to become, 11 of which were going to become apostles. And probably Matthias might have been hanging around there too, as one of the close disciples. But all the trials that the apostles are going to go through, being brought before the Sanhedrin, jailed, threatened with their life, and most of them finally executed. We know that one definitely was martyred. James was murdered, executed by Herod, and tradition has all but John were also similarly executed by governmental officials. So they're going to be going through a lot of trials, and Paul talks about in 2 Corinthians, he's worried about the church too, and false brethren, things that are hindering the church. So there are lots of trials that they're going to go through. They need to be doing this, and so do we.
Precisely. And Bob pointed out, and I failed on Sunday, and I failed again tonight, to delineate. We've been trying to keep track. We've seen through this whole series of exchanges, Jesus addressing the Pharisees, Jesus addressing his disciples or the apostles, Jesus addressing the great multitude that is present for part of it. Luke 17:20, he was clearly answering the Pharisees by 22, he said unto the disciples, so, you know, keep track of that as it goes forward. You know, here coming up in verse 9 of chapter 18, we're about to shift again because he is kind of making now a general address on another topic, but we'll get there in just a moment. Again, the message, as Jesus clearly explains, the message of the persistent widow, she is making her case to a judge that readily admits he doesn't care what men or God think. Jesus' point that he is similarly made, you know, if as a fleshly son asking a father for a fish, is the father going to give him a serpent? Well, obviously not. How much more will the heavenly Father, when we beseech him, provide for us? He's making the same point here. If the evil judge, by persistent petition, will be caused to do what the widow desires and avenge her of her foe, how much more will our heavenly Father, who wants the very best for us in all things, respond to our petitions? Similar point to what he's discussed previously. He does end this section. Sherry, I'm going to jump back across to you. When the Son of Man comes again, what may be lacking on the earth there? Yeah, Luke and Eric alluded to this. I say unto you that he will avenge them speedily. Nevertheless, when the Son of Man comes, shall he find faith on the earth? And this is, I think Chris made this point in one of our discussions, that this is not just, will he find people that will believe in God? No, it's the word pistis that emphasizes the moral conviction, those that will be convicted to God. That's kind of where he came out of chapter 17. You need to be making your decision now, that when decision time comes, you are committed to me. Despite all the signs, despite the fears, despite the pending destruction, you need to be following and obeying me. That falls through to this statement here. Jesus questioning, will he find faith on the earth? Bob.
In 827, and I think Texas Reception, I think West Cotton Work also, too, has the definite article there. So it might be translated the faith, but again, the subjective faith, our subjective faith has to be following the objective faith, but this may be talking about objective faith here, that people are practicing the objective faith.
Okay. Yeah, I didn't notice definite article when I looked at the interlinear, but then I wasn't looking for it probably either. So. Other comments?
Verse 4. Verse 4 says, "For a while they refused, but afterward he said to himself, Lo, I neither fear God nor respect man. Yet she keeps coming. He keeps. Can we apply this to God? That's a bad principle.
No, I mean, Jesus, that's kind of what I was talking about a few minutes ago. Jesus is absolutely applying this to God, but he's saying, you know, again, here in an earthly illustration, here is this persistent person, they're coming, and the judge that she is coming to, he really doesn't care about her problem at all. You know, he says himself, I don't care about man or God. You know, I don't care what either one thinks. But this person is so persistent, they are driving me crazy, I'm going to give them what they want. Jesus says that happens, you know, with men who are not even good. If you come to God and you can, and what did he start in verse 1? He said, you know, pray always. If you come to God and you repeat your petition, accordance with his will. That's the kind of the caveat that's out here. Do you not understand that he is going to hear your prayer and respond? So yeah, it's the principle of the evil judge we don't want to follow. But Jesus says, hear the evil judge. Even men will respond to persistent petition in a worldly physical realm. God is going to do that so much more since he cares for you and wants the best for you. You look like you had a comment. Anyone else? All right, Chris, last one there. For what reason did Jesus give the parable of the Pharisee and the tax collector?
He spake the parable because of those who trusted in themselves that they were righteous and set all other people apart.
Yeah. And of course, we understand that it's not an accident that Jesus chooses a Pharisee and a publican, because I lost my train of thought literally in mid-sentence. That's not promising. But Jesus takes the one that men will assume is righteous, or that will assume their own righteousness, and this has to be instructive to us. The attitude of, I am sure glad I'm not that guy over there, it is not something that we find approved in the Word of God. It is either the attitude of the publican that knows he's a sinner and beseeches God for his help in getting better, or our effort to help the one that is lost in sin get better, not looking down on them, but looking to bring them up into God's kingdom. Other thoughts? Eric.
Well, we live in a world where people see what other people are doing. It's sometimes tempting to compare yourself with other. I don't drink, I don't curse, I don't do all this, so I might be pretty. And if I speak of that, just I'll have a conversation with someone this weekend, and I saying, I do this, I do that. So it's like saying to yourself, oh, I'm gonna do it. Not like the other person wants to do it, but with prayer. Where the Pharisees stayed like, you're unrighteous, you don't do all this, and look at this guy, but our person in Jesus is not with all many people around us.
And I don't know, we don't know, what the precise flow of the conversation and the passage of time is, but it's just been a few paragraphs since he affirmed that if we've done all we're commanded to do, we're still to take the perspective that we're unprofitable servants. And this Pharisee's position is completely opposed to that, because he is checking off what he has done and taking it that is pleasing before God.
Also, we need to note that the Pharisee was comparing himself to other men. The publican said, the sinner, I am the sinner. He's not comparing himself to anyone else. He's looking at himself, and that humility of comparing himself to God's word is what Paul told
And exactly, so as far as verse 9 goes, I'm not positive if he's still addressing only the disciples or if he has expanded, kind of turned back to a larger group when he says, he spake this parable unto certain who trusted in themselves that they were righteous. Certainly, with some of the things that we're going to see very quickly come to pass with the disciples that could have been addressed to only them, but the bottom line is, for those who trust in themselves that they were righteous. And there is, again, a warning there for us as well. Good. Other thoughts? Okay, lesson 51. Chris just basically preached this this lesson Sunday night two or 3 weeks ago. We were out of town one, so I may be losing track somewhere in there. But I don't want to skip the lesson because not everybody was probably here. By the same token, I'm not sure we won't go through it fairly quickly. And if anything is left out, we'll certainly cover that. But this is the Lord is again revisiting the matter. As we've noted, he often did, even in what has been preserved for us, and certainly did in what has not been preserved for us. But he revisits here the matter of marriage, divorce, and remarriage. One thing we do want to keep note of, as we noted last lesson in 1711, it came to pass as they were on the way to Jerusalem. He is decidedly headed that direction now. And now if we look at, flip over, we can look at either Matthew 19, the first couple verses, or Mark 10:1. But in Matthew 19, it came to pass when Jesus had finished these words, he departed from Galilee and came into the border of Judea beyond the Jordan, and great multitudes followed him, and he healed them there. So now he has left that area of Samaria and Galilee for the last time before his crucifixion. He'll be back there again afterwards, after he is risen. But he has left that area now. He's come back down into that area beyond the Jordan, where he has been a few times in our recent studies, the area probably of Perea, where John had been baptizing originally. And so, again, moving decidedly now, very purposely, toward Jerusalem. So, Alicia, do you have number 1 on lesson 51? What passages Jesus appealed to when the Pharisees ask a question about divorce, and what does this passage imply about the nature of marriage? There again, the foundation is that this is the relationship that has been established from the beginning by God. One man, one woman. They leave their respective families, they cleave together, and that's the way it is for life. That's the law, that's the principle. Roger, I'm jumping over to you. Why did God permit divorce for a cause short of fornication in the time of Moses?
Well, it said because of the hardness of their hearts. Exactly what that means, I'm not sure. Because they were still required to obey God's will. For some reason, that was an excuse. It was acceptable for the time.
And indeed, it was due to hardness of heart. And Chris, correct me if I miss anything on the points you made. But there were exceptions. if there was fault found in the wife, the man could put her away. But again, that was because of their weakness and hardness of heart. The principle that Alicia noted to us from Genesis chapter 2 was still God's expectation. And as we've studied previously, when we visited this subject before, once again, the allowance God had made had been superseded and abused to the point where any minor objection at all could be construed as a reason to employ this exception.
Just to be very clear on Deuteronomy 24:1 and following, if you're not careful with that, you'll think that God intended for man and woman to be together from the beginning, but when you get to Deuteronomy 24, he's sort of changing his mind. That's not what's going on here. If you look at the beginning of that chapter, your version might say, if a man or when a man, this is legislation that is given to a man who's wanting to do something that God does not allow. And if or when he does this, then these steps are to be taken. Deuteronomy 24 is not undoing Genesis 2. It's not, I really want y'all to stay together, but by the time of Moses, I'm kind of changing my mind. The second thing is, this is not adultery. Adultery was to be stoned to death. This is some unseemly thing. This is indiscretion, fooling around, uncovering yourself, or something short of adultery. So those two things are very important, or you're going to get to thinking that God changed the law when he got to Deuteronomy 24. He didn't.
Right. For unseemly behavior, but by Jesus' time, there was much more laxity in the fulfillment of that. Now, and I don't recall that it's kind of addressed in the bottom section there, the answering objections to God's law and remarriage. You know, one of the primary points that Chris brought out in the sermon that we should keep readily in mind when this subject comes up with any that we might be discussing it with outside the church is that Jesus' statements are not made to Jews or future Christians. Jesus' statements are, if you will, generic. If a man, no restriction. If a woman, there's no restriction. They are fully encompassing statements that don't take regard to a person's, if you will, spiritual or religious affiliation. They are general laws for mankind that Jesus states. This is my law, and he, as God, can make the law on that. To that end, question 3, what is one exception today whereby God permits divorce and subsequent remarriage? In Matthew 19, verse 9, it's fornication, sexual immorality. That's the one exception. And of course, Chris in the lesson, because it was wide-ranging, extended out into the subsequent teaching that Paul gave, showing that the death of a spouse also does free the living spouse for remarriage. But aside from that, those are the only things that will sever the union in God's mind. So, anything else?
A couple other things about Deuteronomy 24. The word there, unseemly, I think that's what you understand as indecency is what it uses. It's from a root word that means nakedness. So there is something short of adultery that's happening. Chris kind of enumerated that. And that's
was not required under the circumstances, there could still be forgiveness and reconciliation, even under the old law. And there again, the important, and Chris alluded to it, but the important delineation that while the Lord allows for the divorce to take place in the cause of fornication, under the old law, that was a stonable death sentence. So even in this, there is great mercy by the Lord in his law. Other comments?
After that statement they makes, though, when he says, but from the beginning, it has not been this way. Seems to indicate that all that business about the various ways that they have invented to bring about divorce are not valid. Is that the way you read that?
Well, yeah, and we as we've kind of alluded to, there was the already forgot the word you used, but the allowance, the permissiveness that was there under the old law for this circumstance to dissolve the union. The Pharisees had gone beyond that to allow divorce for, as one of their own put forth to Jesus, I think in the Sermon on the Mount, for any cause. But back to Alicia's question, from the beginning it was not so. From the beginning, this was the principle. And there was the stipulation in the old law, but as we always say when we ultimately study this topic, what we just can't lose sight of is the original law of God. One man, one woman, together for life, hardships, difficulties, striving to overcome, and in one case, there is an accommodation.
And although this is not exactly what Justin's bringing out in this lesson, when you look at this, this is a place where Jesus affirms the Genesis account as being literal and accurate. Therefore, any deviation from that is not in accordance with God's word. And one of the things, when we're talking about the preface, before we stop in verse 1, note that, and 2, Matthew talks about healing the crowds. Mark talks about teaching the crowds. The teaching is the important thing. The healing was to confirm the teaching.
Right. So, yeah, and probably should have jumped over and read that as well so we could clarify that, but I appreciate you bringing that out. All right, we'll try to hit the last couple of questions in 51 there at the outset of class Sunday, Lord willing, and then we'll go from there. Appreciate your comments.